Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. With me, as always, is Ethan. And in the middle of summer content season, where you've got shows like The Boys, House of the Dragon, The Bear just released its third season, Emmy-winning content, we bring you more, maybe the best of said content,
100%.
with our very own Ethan Alpern, shooting for his fantasy football life 10 free throws. We streamed this live, tweeted out the link. It was a private stream, so you had to have the link to jump in there. We may make it public, but this video will be public. Quick reminder before we get into this very ridiculous and special episode to please visit workingонthedadpod.com. There you can find our YouTube channel, all of our social media channels, as well as a link to our YouTube where you can see all of our videos. Liking and subscribing and commenting and interacting with our content is the best way to help us grow the podcast, and of course sharing with a friend. And of course, this very special episode is something. Ethan, how you feeling? Do we tell people, how do we want to do this? Are we telling people the result, or are we going to show it in real time?
I think we should just let folks see if judgment, how judgment was faced. But I do want to say that you are not wrong with the comparisons you made to this content with The Boys, House of the Dragon, The Bear. My younger brother, who watches all of those, when I asked him his honest opinion of this, and he said, I loved watching it so much, and I'm so happy you broadcast it to the world. And that is not something my younger brother says often.
Listen, your brother is a Hollywood agent. Am I wrong?
You are correct.
And so a Hollywood agent told you that we are producing great content. Share it with your friends. We're going big time, everybody. But before we break into it a little bit, I did want to give a caveat to everybody that we are going to try and explain what's happening as well as we can for our audio audience. But this is probably an episode best viewed on video. So if you're driving, this isn't the episode for you to maybe listen on iTunes or something like that. This is a great episode to watch on YouTube to see it in all its glory, because there are going to be some things about Ethan's shots, where they land, all this stuff that I think is just best seen to be believed. But Ethan, why don't you take us back to the very beginning of this whole thing? Why are you shooting free throws? What about you and free throws is so darn interesting?
So thank you for asking that, Alex. I am a stubborn man, and I'm a man who very much believes in my conviction and black and white, right and wrong. I my life philosophy is that free throws are muscle memory, that from age roughly 10 on, the free throw never changed. The size of the ball is the one you're using. The height of the rim is what it's going to be. The length of the shot is always what it's going to be. Your body might change slightly, but for the most part, the shot never does. And when you are a collegiate athlete on scholarship, if you are a professional in the NBA or in any of the other various top leagues across the world, it is absolutely insane that you can miss free throws, which are free, uncontested. Like, you are in a climate-controlled arena because it is an indoor sport. It is absolutely absurd that somebody whose own value is determined by how they do on the court could miss a free throw. As a fan, it's infuriating. As somebody who gambles, extremely infuriating. And as somebody who just thinks that if I can do it, a professional ought to be able to do it better, drives me nuts. Because as you can see in this video, someone should pay me something. That's all. That's all. Free throws are free.
Here's my question.
Ridiculous to miss.
Regarding your take. What is an acceptable free throw percentage?
I believe,
and I know you're going to fact categories.
Yes, I believe that if you are a multi-million-dollar basketball earner, missing more than 1 out of 10 is ridiculous.
So 90%. If you are
90%, because at my job, I got to be able to do 90% of my job effectively, or else I'm going to lose it. So let's say our buddy, who is an executive recruiter, who spends a lot of his time on the phone calling people and saying, hey, you interested in taking this job? But then not 1 out of every 10 calls realizes, I don't feel like dialing the 1 before the area code today. Assuming he's using a landline. I realize that actually might be a very outdated reference. But the point is, if he forgot how to use the phone for 1 out of 10 calls, he wouldn't be that good at his job.
Yeah. Across NBA and ABA history, do you know how many players have shot at least 90% from the free throw line for their career?
I know that it is less than 1%. And to me, the fact that is an acceptable percentage in our world baffles me.
Okay. So it is one more than there are hosts of this podcast. There are 3 people, Stephen Curry, Steve Nash, and Mark Price. Damian Lillard with a couple of superb seasons could get there. But yeah, nobody else active is even remotely close. But even if we set just to bring the conversation back into more reality around free throws, one thing that I have always been curious about with free throws, right? I understand, right? You have a friend who's an acquaintance of mine who is a basketball coach. And he basically commented that, he didn't understand it either, of why players don't shoot better, right? And I think I could understand it from a coaching perspective if you have different philosophies where you might not prioritize free throw shooting, because to get free throws, you have to play a style that elicits fouls, right? If you are a team that plays 5 out where everybody's shooting from the perimeter, you're probably not drawing a lot of fouls, and maybe it's not your highest priority. But then again, if you have 5 shooters, you're probably not worried about how they're doing from the line. But all of that is to say, I am always curious why some teams don't prioritize it more when you see a team that draws a lot of fouls and they're shooting like 65, 70% from the line as a team, and individual players, whether it's egregious examples like Shaq or guys that just shoot like 65% from the line, why they've never tried like the granny shot, or something just out there, right? Like Rick Barry is one of those people who, like, he shot 89.3% for his career, right? And he Canes, went to Miami, led the NCAA, the NBA, and the ABA in scoring, but also more importantly shot 89%, and he did it using that underhand style. And I was reading about when he adopted it, he didn't want to do it. His dad was trying to get him to do it. And he was like, this is what the girls do. And so he didn't want to do it. And he finally did it just to shut his dad up. And then he started making them because his dad's like, they're not going to make fun of you if you're making them. Sure enough, the dude shoots almost 90% for his career. Nobody made fun of him, but nobody copied him.
So can I tell you a fun fact? I actually listened to an interview of Rick Barry talking about that on a couple years back. And he actually referenced that in Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, he made 28 free throws. And that was the one game. He was 28 for 32, I think. And he shot granny style that game.
It was, I think, for that season is what I read. I should have said nobody copied him, but Wilt did it. His free throw percentage, he was notoriously bad, like Shaq level bad as a free throw shooter. His free throw percentage went up to 61%, I think, the season he went granny style. And then he gave it up because people were making fun of him. Right. And you're telling me that in the middle of that, he scored 100 points and had the audacity to care what anybody else around him thought? That is ridiculous. But to me, it's funny because, like, I see these guys in interviews and they just go, I want to do anything to help the team win. Doesn't really matter what my stats are as long as the team wins. And it's like, I feel like if you can tuck the ball between your legs and throw it granny style and make 10% more. And this is what I would say, that if you are a guy who is shooting 85 plus percent, 80% plus from the line, fine, not broke. Don't worry about it. But if you are a guy shooting 50, 60, 70% from the line, I'm like, why wouldn't you try and get that next 10%? Right. You know, like that, I don't know. That just seems very basic to me. But anyway,
I want to say one more thing. As a fan, you know, this was a rough basketball season for you and I watching the Miami Hurricanes in college. And there were a couple games where we lost by 7 and we had missed more than 7 free throws.
Right.
Now, I know in reality, it's not necessarily a 1-to-1 correlation, but for the purposes of my take, it is more than a 1-to-1 correlation.
But it does a lot of other things. It does a lot of other things. I mean, in the span of the game, and I mean, we could go into all of that. But I mean, like, if you make a few more of those free throws and it tightens up the game, it changes what the strategy is. Maybe you're defending instead of fouling at the end because instead of a 2-possession game, it's a 1-possession game or something like that, right? It can dictate so much. But back to this contest and why you're shooting free throws because of this take. We are in a fantasy football league with some of our fraternity brothers, and we have a somewhat unique rule that was made somewhat famous by a league that Bill Simmons is in, I think with John Hamm. They are actually ruthless about it, where they have, let's say you have a 12-team league, they have 13 members, and every year the winner gets to pick someone to kick out for the year. Well, in the Bill Simmons League, John Hamm told this story on Late Night where he basically showed up to the draft and the winner was like, nope, you're out for the year. And so you go through all the prep and show up to the draft, and then they decide who's out. In our league, we are, I don't want to say less ruthless, because I think we don't make it as simple as just pointing and saying you're out, but we do make the selection a little bit earlier. So Ethan, what was your challenge?
We also don't have the means to all fly to Vegas for one weekend.
Yeah, sure.
And then
we're not strapped like John Hamm and Bill Simmons.
So we too are in a 12-team, 13 people league. And because this league is, like Alex mentioned, a fraternity brother group chat as well. Most of the people in the league are in the group chat. We talk a lot about the Hurricanes throughout the year. And when we're missing free throws, I get really annoying, probably. I think I'm right, and I'm saying important stuff. But I assume it can be somewhat annoying if I weren't me. So because of this, the winner of the league this year happened to be the commissioner. And he's a man in finance. Blue eyes, 6'5", trust fund. No, he's just a man in finance. He's none of those other things. But I don't know. Anyway, for those of you who watch the TikToks, he wanted me to put my money where my mouth is. So he decided that because I complained so much about the Canes free throw shooting, and he calculated that he looked up that their free throw percentage for this past season was 73%. And since my take is that collegiate athletes should do better than me, he decided that I would be kicked out and the kick out is a 1-year banishment. I come back the next season. Unless I was able to make 6 out of 10, plus a money ball shot. So out of 11 shots, 7 need to go in, including the 11th. And that is because the Miami percentage was 73%. So I guess 70% or 66, I think, would be 7 out of 11. Somewhere around there is nope, not even close. Anyway,
we're not a math podcast. That would be 8 out of 12. But the point is, it wasn't meant to directly correlate. It was meant to say we're not even going to raise the bar as high as the Miami Hurricanes. Can you beat it? So anyway, what did you do to prepare for the challenge? Because this challenge was issued in, I think, February.
Yeah, so it was first issued in February. As you all know, I live just out Washington D.C. They have this thing called winter there, so I was waiting for the weather to be nice. There's a basketball court across the street from my house, so
as you can see,
I actually
standing there at this lovely outdoor recreational court.
Yep. So in March, I actually decided I was just gonna take my daughter, my 4-year-old, 4.5-year-old, almost 5-year-old, to the court with me. She was gonna mess around, and I was gonna shoot free throws, and I actually did totally fine, having not picked up a ball in like 5. I had to buy that ball just for this competition, and but I did really. Then I was chatting with our with the commissioner because, I told him, hey, like things have just started, weather's starting to get nicer. Can we do June? He said, hey, let's do May. I said, May's good. Then May came around and I remembered, oh, right, I have this thing to do. So I got an extension to June. Because of this outdoor court, there is, weather dependencies. So we decided it would either be last weekend or this weekend. And there was an epic heat wave last weekend. So this weekend ended up being the time. So that's we are recording this on Monday, July 1st. This competition took place yesterday on June 30th. And you will be hearing this or you should be watching this on Thursday, July 11th.
Or 12th, I think.
Or 12th. Yeah.
Well,
it depends on when we air it. It's pre-recorded.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But so did you work at all on your form?
Yes.
What were you doing when you went out there?
Yes. Thanks for bringing me back to the question. So this last week leading up to yesterday's contest, I really hit the court. I was getting my chores done in between dinner and bedtime. Right after bedtime, I was going to the court usually around 8:30. I was shooting till it got dark. I was shooting roughly 100 shots a night, keeping track of every 10. There was a rules discrepancy, so then I realized I needed to be shooting them in sets of 11 because of that money ball. Then there was something intriguing happened on Thursday because we last recorded. That was the night we last recorded, and I was clearly here for that. My wife instructed me to go to shoot in between dinner and bedtime because we had an early dinner. And there was this guy who, when I showed up to the court, just said, hey, can I rebound for you? And I said, sure. So he and I were talking the whole time. So I actually did practice with some distraction, but I had a rebounder. But the one thing that was different, because I was telling him about the contest, obviously, is he said, have you tried just like pinpointing with your eyes the 3 hooks in the front of the rim and aiming for above the top hook? And I started doing that literally just 3 days before because I felt that the pressure was getting to me and I needed something to take my mind off the pressure, which is also why I practiced. Usually I'd say 90% of my practice time, I was listening to podcasts, mostly political podcasts where things are not great right now. So I was distracted, but I wanted that kind of distraction. I wanted some way to amplify the fact that despite my take talking about a climate controlled arena, there are still people there. And, noise does impact focus. So I did want to create an environment where that was happening. But ultimately, the night before the contest, I shot 165 shots. I was pretty happy with my performance. And then before the recording, I got to the court roughly 30 minutes earlier. I went a little slower, but I shot about 60 warm-up shots, including the money balls.
Okay.
Before I went live. Yeah.
So let's get to the video here.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've got the volume lowered so that we can talk over it a little bit. But as one of our friends pointed out, watching it live, it really does look like a Taliban hostage video. It's got that vibe.
Yeah, and that is
your wife is the camera person here, right?
Yeah, not the fault of my wife as the camera person. I think the setting was just made to look a little rough.
It's a gray, overcast day. And so, not the best. How thrilled was your wife to be a part of history like this?
Not a big not, because while I was warming up, my wife was wrangling both the girls to bring them across the street in the stroller, and explained that he has an important thing to do on the basketball court. And I explained to my older daughter that I would play with her after, but she needed to stay still. And I'm just going to pause right here. You did not really need to hear all of that, because that is what Alex and I spent the last 20 minutes talking about. That's the preamble. But for those of you listening, this is a good time to stop and switch to the YouTube, because I am about to start shooting. But most importantly, just to set the stage, my wife is holding the camera, and my almost 2-year-old and my almost 5-year-old are on the baseline. The 2-year-old's in the stroller. The almost 5-year-old is standing next to the stroller. And remember, her instructions were to stay still and be quiet.
So you're stepping up, and I have to ask. So first shot, you brick it off the back. I've got a lot of questions here.
Sure.
What's going through your mind after you miss the first one? Right, because you only get 4 misses.
Right. I felt like, it was a rough start, but I got 9 more to go. And there have been plenty of times in my practice reps that I missed the opening shot. In fact, one of my practice reps earlier in the afternoon, I actually had missed the first 4 and made the next 6 in a row. So I knew it was possible. So
yeah. I think the other thing that I really have a question about, and this was a question we got from, I think, a couple of our friends, but your pre-shot routine, let's just say it's brief. It's brief. And when I look at guys like your boy, JJ Redick, right, and other great free throw shooters, a guy like JJ who shot 89%, or you look at a guy like Steph Curry, they have a little bit more routine to them. It's more like a golfer reading a putt, or even stepping up to the tee, where there's just a lot of like alignment and feel and getting yourself right into the right spot. And so did you put any thought into that, or was that just, did you try that?
So that's a great question. I'd like to point out I am also a bad golfer, and I don't have the longest routine there. But what I did notice was the longer my routine was, the more I was thinking about the consequences of each shot. So over this week, I was trying to find the right amount of balance between a consistent routine and not overthinking it, just focusing on the shot and moving on to the next one right as the ball left my hand. So that is what was going on there.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, so the ball goes off. I know you had talked early on about having your oldest do some rebounding. Did that sort of fall through?
So after I said it,
so
which sounded
he just
like
made the second shot. For those of you listening along, he made the second shot.
I'm now 1 for 2.
Your daughter rebounding.
Yeah. So at first it sounded like a good idea. I thought it'd be really, really cute. But then I realized we actually do not share our daughters' names or our children's pictures on this podcast. And I knew we wanted to do this, and I also knew we were putting this on YouTube. So I turned to my wife and I said, as cute as it would be for blank's name to be our rebounder, I think actually that would be a bad idea for her privacy. So ultimately I decided I'd rebound myself. And that guy I told you about on Thursday night, because I was making some shots. So I asked him what he was doing at 11:30 on Sunday. And he said, if you give me $20 now, I'll be there. I did not give him $20 because 1, I didn't have it. And 2, as I kept talking to him, I realized, he might not be the best guy to have around.
All right. Yeah. So you make your second shot. Got to be feeling pretty good. Obviously, the rebound is shorter, and you were just you're right back up there. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you're thinking about the consequences, trying to get it over, that's good. So we have the third shot here, goes up, and now we're 2 for 3. All right, so you're feeling good. You're back on the right side of 50%. All right, and but it's still early. Bricks it right off the front. Definitely a short arm there.
That one did not feel good. It felt wrong coming off.
2 for 4, and then you get the friendly bounce, friendly roll to go 3 for 5. So you're right back on pace.
But, so I'd like to pause right here for just a second. For those of you both listening and watching, I had mentioned I had asked my daughter to be quiet, and you had just heard a whine to the tune of "Daddy," and now it begins. Now it gets really tough for this second 5.
Yeah.
This is the sixth shot, goes in.
So he's 4 for 6 now. All right, 4 for 6. Feels like he's on the right pace. Bricks it, rolls around the rim, goes off to the left. So now he's 4 for 7. Back feeling a little dicey. 5 for 8. Okay, and now it's 2 shots, right? So we'll pause it to remind people that he needs 6 shots and then the money ball. So he's got 2 shots left.
Make that 6th. Yeah.
To make that 6th shot. And to add to the personal intrigue in the room, we did a pot with a bunch of the guys from the league, some other folks. Everybody put in $10, and then we got randomly assigned in a spreadsheet numbers 1 through 10 for how many shots Ethan would make. I got 6. In a weird twist of fate, I became rooting for Ethan to make it into the league. Always want him in there. It's great. I've beaten him in the playoffs the past couple of years. That's also
great. I'm good. My presence for you is good.
Yeah, I've got no qualms, but I stood to make $90 in profit on this $100 pot. If he could make the money ball wasn't part of the equation, so if he could make one of these next 2 shots, I make $100 and he stays in the league. We've both got something riding on it.
Yes.
5 for 8. 5 for 9. Bounces off to the left. He sprints after it. There's a hill over there. So for those of you listening, he's on this outdoor court. It's lined with trees. It looks like some tennis courts maybe behind there.
But no, that's actually the parking lot. So you definitely want to get the ball before it goes down the hill.
And he sprints after it to save the ball. And I think about this moment when I went back and rewatched it. Because, obviously, you're a person who runs for your exercise. You ran, I think, 4 miles today or something that. But just that little sprint, that little jog that gets your heart rate rising. I'm like, when your heart rate's already about to be rising, you're 5 for 9. This is do or die. You've got to make 2 in a row, right? They're both money balls now. And I'm like, he runs after it. And then we start the video back. And you calmly walk back. Don't get me wrong. But you get to the line, 2 dribbles, fire, boom, and it hits the back of the rim. I mean, honestly, a half an inch too long. That's what she said. It was right there. I mean, it was right there.
Right.
I took a screenshot of it earlier where that ball is, and you see it going over the front of the rim, and you think it's in.
And if we could go back for just a second.
Yeah. You drive there.
I just need you all to hear what happened at the release of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the heckler from Happy Gilmore, inhabited the body of your daughter. Who just,
decides to yell at her little sister at the opportune time.
Yeah, you're gutted,
you hate
right?
to see it.
Mostly for me, but a little bit for you, right?
Yeah,
That was a big
bit.
shot for both of us. But I think overall for me, I mean, this was a 3 minute and something video. You did go on to shoot, and we can keep sort of playing this in the background, but you did go on to shoot the money ball. You make the money ball, you know, and granted, who knows what would have happened in a different, you know, environment had you made that sixth shot, because the money ball would have been higher stakes, but
Sure.
you made it. Let the history books show you made it. And so this is you, you know, signing off for your second banishment from our fantasy football league. This is not the first time you've been banished for a year. And I will say, not the first time you've been banished over one of your hotter sports takes.
It's true. My first banishment was actually because I drafted 2 tight ends back to back, both of whom had great seasons, but you know, there was a lot of anger from the champion that I decided to use a tight end in my flex spot. For those of you who don't know, when I played high school football, I was a starting varsity tight end for 2 years. So I am quite partial to the athleticism and finesse of the position. So, and also,
as on display by these screenshots.
Yes, also tight ends date Taylor Swift. So, you know, you might want to double up. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So the, you know, that is, it was gut wrenching, but definitely a fun experience. And I think it was over quicker than I expected it to be. More like a horse.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Yeah.
I think mainly because of your routine, and maybe because we live in an age where I feel like I watch so many like highly produced videos where like there's multiple cuts, and like I know what we're capable of, right?
Sure.
And I know like we weren't going to be doing that, but I think it was just like the fact that it was just 3 minutes and the 10 shots, and like, you know, I expected you to take your time and to let the moment get to you so that you could then shake it off. I don't know, that I guess, but that was sort of it, where I was just like, and where I'm at, right, is not only do I have some money riding on the line, but I had just dropped off my family because we had gone to the airport to drop them off, to send them off to Cape Cod. And I am in the house alone, which is why I'm recording inside instead of out at the studio, because the pets don't mind when I record this hour. They nap all day. But I just dropped them off, and I dropped them off. We were streaming this at 11:30 Eastern. I dropped them off, and it was 11:22 when I got back in the car. And like, I zoomed to downtown West Palm, where I was going to like a burger restaurant that I wanted to go to, and like parked in the parking deck and was sitting there on my phone with it piping through the Bluetooth of my wife's car, of you shooting these free throws. Waiting on, on pins and needles.
Yeah. So the reason for the timing was we are a bi-coastal fantasy league, but also 11:30 is kind of the sweet spot between right after the girls' gymnastics class, which ends at 11, and, you know, pre-afternoon nap. So, you know, I wanted some time to warm up. I wanted some time to get in the zone. I clearly did not have the performance that I wanted throughout the day yesterday. So it's been about almost 36 hours since this happened. And, you know, there were some moments where I felt genuine disappointment in myself.
Did you ever consider the granny shot?
So I did. But it felt, it did not feel natural at the time. And given my, once I really was able to start training and kicking it into gear, I didn't want to change things entirely.
Yeah.
And
I hear that.
I also needed to be true. I also needed to be true to my take.
Yeah.
You know,
but I mean, at the same time, like, I think you could be true to your take and say that like there are more efficient methods, but sure, yeah, I get that. So you know, every now and then when I am having like a mobility day or something at the gym, quite often I will do some mobility and some stretching movements, and then I'll go shoot hoops because my mobility day lines up with the day where there's no workout classes or like organized rec ball on the court in the mornings. And so I would go out there and shoot over the past, 6 months, and I would do a lot of free throws just to sort of be like, what am I shooting? Right. Like, is this realistic for Ethan? Because like I don't think 60% without a crowd and like without having to play a game and all that stuff is terribly unrealistic. But in those ventures, I definitely tried some granny shots, and I was just all over the place with them. Like I couldn't get the distance down. Like I could hit, like I could get it in a straight line, but I could not get the distance down. And so I would leave some, just whiff them short or clang them off the back. And it was just, I couldn't do it. So but I will say I was testing myself, and I was like, oh, I'm around 80%, which felt pretty good, but I didn't have any pressure.
Yeah. Leading the last 24 hours going into yesterday's competition, I had, I think 2 5 out of 10s, but everything else was 6 out of 10 or better. Yeah. So I was feeling really good. I had a few 9s in there with the money ball. So, essentially 10 out of 11.
Yeah. I mean,
but, I think ultimately, and I know this for a fact, our commissioner wanted to teach me a lesson. I still stand by it. I am a 5'8" bad basketball player.
How many times in the past 2 weeks did you practice free throws?
7.
In the 2 weeks leading up to it, you practiced 7 times.
Yes.
And before that, how much did you practice? Like total cumulative hours practice for this.
Total cumulative hours was that one time in March. And then I was like, oh, I've got plenty of time. And in classic University of Miami Ethan mode, I procrastinated.
Sure.
Before the final exam.
Sure. So total hours. Where I'm getting at is a professional or an NCAA athlete, high-ranking amateur, would have so much more practice availability, so much more practice time, somebody actually coaching them and critiquing them and giving them feedback. I think it's realistic, if you're trying to get better and you're really trying to work on it. But it's also one of those things where I think to make it very similar to golf, because I think the free throw has a lot in common with golf. Like the more mechanically sound you are, the more repeatable it is. The best in the world can do the same thing 90% of the time, right? And but I think about that mentality that like if you practice the wrong thing, like if you go out to the driving range and you have something wrong in your swing and you keep doing that thing for 100 balls, all you have done is cemented the muscle memory of that bad swing. And so when you sometimes talk about how free throws are just muscle memory, I'm like, yeah, it might be, but like their muscle memory might be bad muscle memory. That's sort of the thing where I'm like, that's where I would just be like, okay, stop just doing the same thing over again, drastically change your mechanics, go to a different style of shot. I've even heard of some big men who struggle, a la Shaq, would go to like a one-handed shot because the ball feels more akin to like a baseball or a tennis ball in their hand. So it's easier for them to like almost beer pong it like that without the guide hand getting in the way to like gum it all up.
Right.
It feels to them like 2 hands on a Rubik's Cube or something.
And that's an excellent point. Bad mechanics will lead to bad muscle memory, will lead to missed shots. But I will say, I was correcting myself throughout the week. There was a reason I shot so many, at a minimum, 100 shots a night.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to, and I was actually switching hoops. I didn't do the same hoop every time because, I wanted to make sure that I was doing the same thing on both sides of the court. And also, court rules be court rules. And, I didn't always claim the same spot. So there was actually one night where I barely got a chance to play at all because, you know, I was just too late because, you know, kids being the priority and stuff. But
yeah,
ultimately, my takeaway from all of this is that I still stand by my take. But with regard to how this all went, yes, I'm going to be sad to not be in the league this year. But let's be honest, I'm definitely saving money by not losing in our league this year. It's only 1 year, and, you know, there's plenty of other stuff. I'm also in 2 other fantasy football leagues, so it's not going to be a complete loss. But there's going to be a lot that, you know, keeps me relevant in your guys' hearts, I think. And I, you know, genuinely, I thought this was a very fun and hilarious kick out challenge. You know, this is actually the first time that there has been, you know, a challenge with the ruthlessness. There was 1 year where the champion made us all do a Masters pool, and whoever lost the Masters pool got to be kicked out. So there was some, you know, challenge to that. But usually it's just some kind of long, elaborate ruse that breaks somebody's heart. But this was actually a really creative and fun way. And so I'm actually really happy to be a part of it. And like I said, there were a lot of people I sent this to because this fantasy football league is not the only people I share this take with. I'm a very consistent person. So, you know, there's multiple friend groups who have heard me complain a lot about this. But Alex, I know we are running long, but you did say that there were some questions from the group. Did you get to all of them?
Yeah, it was mostly about the pacing, right? And okay, how it felt quick. I think the ball flight and the ball arc, I don't know if you videotaped yourself at any point, but, you know, it looked a little flat. It was something else I noticed, you know, and that's going to just make it harder to get it in the hoop, just geometry, right? Doing its thing there. I won't explain because, you know, I don't understand, you know, I can't, but.
So I will say there were some moments where I tried to go a little more high arc, but I had too much bend in my elbow, and it actually wasn't. There were a couple of air balls that I would wish to not discuss.
Yeah. I mean, you do have to figure out what works for you and what you can repeat, and it's all a little weird. But anyway, I want anybody listening to this, drop in the comments your favorite fantasy football related challenge, whether that's something dumb you do for draft order or last place finish. I don't think a lot of leagues do the kick out thing that we do, but if you do, I'd love to hear about that too. Any kind of fun stuff you guys are subjected to. Ethan, is there anything you wanted to add before we head out?
Not really. I just want to thank all you millions of listeners for indulging Alex and I in this 30 for 30 on what might be the greatest free throw challenge of all time. I hope you were all
every basketball player who's ever lived who hasn't made free throws so that it led us to this moment, because if you had just practiced a little bit harder, Ethan wouldn't have anything to complain about and he'd be a happy man.
Yeah, and who would want that?
All right, guys, we'll catch you later. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.